Hi you guys, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I have quite the update for you guys. I know close family knows about this, but honestly, not a ton of people know about the past week that's gone down, and this is just a scary reality that I feel like called to share because one, it's something that I've heard but kind of didn't take like the severity of, and I wish I would have, and you'll see why. But I did spend my week last week in the hospital. Thankfully, I got out in time for Thanksgiving. But when I tell you, things went from me at a tennis tournament and like not a single thing wrong to ICU for a few days. And it was bad. So I'm gonna walk you through my scary experience and just like a scary reality of like being paralyzed that I've heard but never really took seriously. So I'm gonna share with you what happened. So yeah, here we go. Let me explain. Okay, we're gonna backtrack a while. So I don't know if I mentioned this in a video. I think I did. I just don't remember. But when I got to college, I developed a pressure sore. At first, I thought it was just a little nick. It was just a little nick. However, that little nick got bigger and it turned into like a pressure spot, and it slowly got worse and worse. I went home in, I don't know, September. I don't know if that's accurate, but I'm pretty sure it was like September, October. I went home to wound care and they said you have a stage 2 wound. It's bad, but it's not like awful. Like you can, no hospital time, no nothing, go home, take care of it, get off your butt. Okay, I took that very seriously. I went home, I instantly like tried to get as much light to my butt as possible. That's what they said. Basically saying make sure your butt is not touching like a surface. So I went home, I went back to college. I would go to class, and then if I wasn't in class, I was in my dorm room laying on my back with my legs propped up, so the pressure sore was completely relieved. The pressure sore significantly got better. It was scarring around the outside, and I saw that, and I instantly kind of got back into my regular routine of life, with tennis and like just not getting off of it as much as I probably should have. I took it healing as if it was healed, which was my mistake. The pressure sore was doing fine for a bit. The way I kept it like safe or concealed is I had like a special cream that they gave me in wound care, and then a very thick bandage. That was like my saving grace. And I reapplied every 2 days. I was very on the regimen. However, again, I was still back in sports now, CrossFit, tennis, very active, always on my butt, like very much back to normal life, but still having that bandage. Still, things are looking good with my pressure sore. One day, my bandage fell off, and it went from scarring to, I went to PT that day and did sit-to-stands, and I just moved a lot, and went on my butt. The sore opened up in that moment. I like remember, this is so much information that you don't need to know, but I remember like it opening up because I was doing sit-to-stands, and you could see where like the sore had opened up, not from blood, but just from like it being like, you get the idea, and it was like on the mat, and I was like, oh crap, like my sore is opened up, and I was like, okay, what am I gonna go home and look at? I went home and I kind of had like a whoa, it had opened up, it like expanded, but I was like, okay, like it's all right, we'll backtrack, go back to heavy with the trying to get off of it more and like bandaging it. However, I had a tennis tournament that weekend, and then that following weekend, which is last Wednesday is when I left for the tennis tournament. My sore was like bad, but like not horrific. I played tennis on it. I sat in a sports wheelchair with a very thin cushion all day. I bandaged it earlier, so like I didn't know the severity. And when I went to change my bandage Thursday morning, post the tennis tournament, sitting on it, playing on it all day, like it was night and day that it had changed. The sore itself had expanded significantly. It looked infected. It was so red around like the sore itself. All of the skin around the sore was starting to break down. My butt was hard. Like the whole, like that whole left side was hard. My hamstring was like a little hard. My like groin, like area kinda, that like muscle right there, that was hard and swollen from like those lymph nodes. Those were swollen, and I was starting to kind of panic. I call my mom. She comes to my room, she looks at it, and she was like, "Okay, sweetie, like this isn't great. Like let's bandage it up. I'm kind of nervous. I don't know how I feel about you playing, but we'll just go with it. I'll bandage it up, make sure it looks good." And I went. I'm sitting on it. It is so painful. Mind you, I'm like a paraplegic who has a decent amount of sensation. So it was painful to sit on, for one. And I left that hotel shaking. Like, and I kept saying, like, not like horrifically, but shaking. I'm going to backtrack a little bit as far as symptoms that led up to this. I started taking gabapentin on that Wednesday because I was having really bad nerve pain, probably because of the pain of the pressure sore was like radiating, and it was like causing nerve pain. Because when you have like a cut or a sore or some sort of injury below your line, if you're an incomplete, your signals just get mixed up. So for some people that causes, I mean, complete or incomplete for this, but like autonomic dysreflexia, AD is what I call, I don't think I said that right, but orthostatic something. Like it causes like our bodies to kind of like tell us something's wrong if we can't feel it. I could feel it and my body's still like telling me something's wrong. So I'm having these symptoms of like, I took the gabapentin, and because then my nerve pain was really bad. And I took it and I started like getting sick like the same day I started taking it. I was like, huh. And when I mean sick, I mean extreme headache, like dizziness. I'm so fatigued. I'm taking naps. I'm not a nap person. I don't, even if I'm tired, I'm not someone to take a nap. And I would take like 3-hour naps. And I had the worst headache, and the only thing that would like be okay with it is I would take Tylenol, sleep it off, and then I'd wake up and I'd still have a headache. Like it was an unbeatable headache. I would get like shivers. I would be like so dizzy. I'd be driving and I'd have like problems driving. And I was like, geez, like I'm really feeling the effects of gabapentin. No, that wasn't the case. I was actually in the beginning stages of sepsis. So what I thought was just like symptoms of the medication, and I was gonna give it a week before I like was like, okay, this isn't gonna work for me, this medication. And it just happened to be that I started that medication the same time that, yeah. So it led to that, but it was actually what we found out later, sepsis, and it was the beginning stages of infection. So to continue the story, I went to the tennis tournament. The whole way there, I'm like shaking. I'm in pain from the sore itself. I'm just kind of out of it. But I'm holding it together. I'm like playing it cool. Everyone's like, "Why are you so cold?" And I'm like, "I'm not." I'm audibly shaking. It was horrible. Like I have videos. I just didn't make any sense. Like it was bad, to say the least. Okay, so I'm in my first match of the day, and I had already felt really bad. Like I was crying, like, and I'm a pretty tough cookie, but I had talked to my parents. I like stepped away. I was shaking so bad. I asked one of my friends one of my teammates if I could go sit in her car because I was shaking so bad. I was like, I need to get out of like this like cold weather. It was cold, but it wasn't as cold as it like was for me to be shaking that bad. I go to my car or her car. I sit in there, and I'm still like, I'm in a warm environment at this point, and I'm shaking. I'm like, is this anxiety? Like I don't think it is, but like I don't know what else could cause me to be shaking this bad. I start calling people and I'm like, what's happening? And I'm just like, something is not right. I had this like gut feeling. My parents get to the tournament and they come and find me, and I like pulled myself together. Like, I'm like, no, like, you're not gonna cry, like, you're fine, like, you're like delusional, like, stop. No. So then my dad's like, they start talking to me, and then I just like start to cry because I'm like, something is not right. I think I need to go to the hospital. Like, and like, if I'm saying that, like, that's like a telltale, because I don't want to go to the hospital. I don't like the ER. I actually hate the ER. Had bad experiences every single time I've been, other than the last, but you'll see. So anyways, I pull through. I'm like, my dad's like, I don't know if you should play. And I'm just like, no, it's fine. I'll be okay. I explain my symptoms. We have a few family doctors. My mom's like talking to them. They're giving their opinion. And once they found out all of my symptoms of headache and like all of these things, like dizziness, like extreme fatigue, they're like, okay, she might be like actually going septic. Like, this is not good. You need to take her to the ER, just in case. So they end up pulling me from my match. I'm mid-match, and I'm like refusing to withdraw due to the fact I didn't want to withdraw because these players like flew in to play, and I'm like, now they're not going to get to play. And also, like, my doubles partner flew in, and he's not going to be able to do doubles now. I'm like, I have to pull through for them. Like, I cannot like not play. Like, so I'm trying so hard, and I'm on that court, like, I'm on the court, and I'm genuinely so out of it. And I think I'm playing it off. I think like no one can notice. I'm playing it cool. But like, I'm seeing triple of the guy that I'm playing. I'm like so out of it. I'm like doing like this, like I couldn't keep my eyes open. Whenever I'd face away from like the crowd, I'd like kind of like close my eyes and just be like, hey, you're fine. Like, I'm like really trying to convince myself that I'm like okay, when like I knew I wasn't. And then my mom ended up going to the head ref and withdrawing me. I get withdrawed, and then I go to the emergency room, and I know it's bad. Like, at this point, my symptoms I'm extremely nauseous. My mom's pushing me to the car, and I'm like, stop, I have to throw up. Like, I'm gonna throw up. And I'm just extremely nauseous, and I feel awful. And in my head, I'm still like, what is going on? This doesn't make sense. Like, I don't get what's happening. But I get to the ER. We go to the closest ER. It had a 2-star rating. I'm honestly just gonna be so honest. It was Piedmont Henry was the name of the hospital. We get there, and we're in like the waiting room, and the lady, when I tell you, like this is so humbling, but like, this was me. I'm like, my eyes were closed the entire time. I am so beyond like out of it. I'm like shaking. I look like I'm like seizing. I look like I've been crying because I have been, because I'm in so much pain. I like don't know what's wrong with me. And I'm kind of freaking out. Like, I'm not like audibly like freaking out, but I'm just like internally freaking out. And they basically made us wait in the waiting room after we told them, hey, like, we think she's septic, like, and like they put in the system septic protocol. However, I waited in the waiting room. They call me back. I get my blood pressure taken, and my temperature taken. Temperature comes back that I have no fever, when I am like shivering, but I'm burning up. Like, there's no way. Every person to the touch was like, every person that touched me was like, oh my gosh, she's so warm. Like, she has a fever. Like, it was so clear. So I don't know what was wrong with that machine, but it said I didn't have a fever. I got my blood pressure taken, and it was low. I'm so out of it. I'm like saying like crazy things. Like, I didn't say much because I wasn't really talking much at this time. But like, the first thing to come out of my mouth is, she was like, how tall are you? And I was like, 6'7". And she was like, huh? And my mom was like, no, she's not 6'7". And then I like looked at my mom, was like, no, Mom, like, I'm 6'7". And like, I tried to like play it off, and I genuinely was like convinced I was 6'7". And what's really weird is like, I barely remember this, but like, my mom has told me. But I looked back up at my mom, and I was like, I'm 6'7". And she was like, no, she's like 5'8" maybe. Like, she's not 6'7". And the lady was just really dismissive. It was just a horrible experience. We ended up going back to the waiting room after that. They call us back again. We go to this room where there's just like a chair and I'm supposed to take blood. I'm like uncontrollably, another video of like me in this room. I'm like trying to calm myself down. I can't. Like, I'm so sick. Like, so sick. Like, barely conscious. I'm trying so hard not to pass out. My mom was like, you were talking and you made no sense. I don't know what I said. I got in there and I'm like, Dad, I have to lay down. Like, I am so sick. And there was a chair in there. I was like, I just need to get off my butt. Like, I'm having like a mix of autonomic dysreflexia. I'm septic. Like, I'm not well. And so my dad like starts to like help me get over, because I can't transfer. I'm so weak at this point. My dad like helps me. I get her, and the second the lady walks in, she's like, whoa, wait, what are you doing? And I look back, and mind you, again, I'm not saying much. The first thing I said was a 6-7 thing, and this was like the second thing I've said. And I was like, please, can I please lay down? Like, I'm so sick. And like, I'm just, like, not audible, but she can get what I'm saying. And she was like, no, y'all have to go back to the waiting room. I'm so sorry. Like, we can't help you yet. Like, you can't lay down. And then we were like, I was like, please, I need to lay down. Like, do you have anything? We're like, anything, a gurney, a stretcher. In the hallway, I have to get off my butt because I have a pressure sore. And, like, she was just like, no, I'm sorry. And I legit go, I was like, Mom, I'll just lay on the floor of the hospital. And the lady responds with, yeah, that's what you're going to have to do. You have to go do that. Like, you have to go lay on the floor of the hospital, like in the waiting room. Mind you, again, I am septic from infection. The last thing I need to do is, one, catch something on that nasty hospital floor, or like get more infection from whatever is on that floor. But that's what they told me to do. So we're like, okay, well, how long are we going to have to wait? I was like, I knew that the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta was 15 minutes away. And I was like, will it be longer than 50 minutes? And she was like, oh yeah, for sure. And we were like waiting time. And we were like, okay, we're out of here. And we're like, okay, we're going to go to CHOA. And then she was so sassy. She yelled to all of her friends. She's like, they're going to CHOA. She, was something, a who. So we left, and we're like figuring out like how, if we call an ambulance now, they're going to take us back to this hospital because we're in the hospital parking lot. Like, the only thing we can do is drive there. And then we're like, maybe we could drive halfway, then call an ambulance, because we're just trying to get me in. And like, this is where like the ER can be so messed up, but it's whatever. We get to Children's Healthcare Atlanta. They have all of my records, because if you guys have been following me, you know that I went to Children's Healthcare Atlanta after my like initial like spinal cord injury. That's where I did all my rehabilitation there, and I was at Children's Healthcare Atlanta for a year, almost 9 months. And so when I got there, they had all my records, they had everything. But the reason we went to the closest hospital is because I was so sick. That car ride over, I mean, I was awake the whole time. Like, I never slept because I was in so much pain, but I was so like out of it, like so out of it. We get there, we go inside, they get us basically straight to a bed after taking like a few like vital signs, whatever. I get to a room, they start pumping me with fluids, they give me an oral antibiotic after we tell them. They look at it, we get seen by wound care, we get seen by a doctor. My blood pressure is pretty low. Like, I already have a low blood pressure and it's lower than normal, so it looks really bad, but like, it's not like horrific. It's just bad. I'm talking like 80/50 maybe. So like not great, but like doable. But they're like, we can't send you to the floor if your blood pressure isn't stable, so we have to send you to the ICU. I'm like, lovely. So I go to the ICU. ICU, there's stricter rules. Like, you're gonna get your blood pressure taken like a lot more often. You're gonna get constantly like vitals, all of that throughout the night. And so I had been pumped with fluid. I had been given a medication to help with like my horrific headache. And honestly, I was feeling pretty good. Like, I was like, all right, this is like the first time I haven't been in pain. The first time, like, I couldn't look at my phone screen. I couldn't text any of my friends what was happening, or like family or anything. My mom did all that for me because they were just worried because they knew what was happening. The people at the tournament, like, I couldn't communicate, period. I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't look at people. The lights bothered me. I had like either the lights off or something over my eyes. And then once that, it was like toltardine or something. like saved my headache. So I, anyways, get out of the ER. They're like, okay, they took blood, they cultured my wound, they like did blood cultures, all the stuff. They found out that night that I had some sort of infection in my bladder, which was wild because I mentioned, like, going in there, I was like, I wonder if this has something to do with a UTI. I had no symptoms of a UTI, but I just had like a feeling. So I was like, hey, can you check for a UTI? Because that is something that is common when you're like cathing and doing like stuff that like your bladder gets exposed to things easier. So we go to the ICU. They're running all these tests. Things are getting cultured, but they take time. However, that night, my IV somehow, they've been pumping me with fluid, so I'm starting to feel better. Swelling up like a pufferfish, but I'm starting to feel better. However, the IV broke in the middle of the night. Somehow it got bent, and no one's fault, got bent, and she noticed that it wasn't in. She pulled it out, and I had already woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning when we had this realization, because I woke up, I had to use the bathroom, and then I was like, I don't feel so good. It went in the matter of like minutes. I went from like, I don't feel so good to like not conscious, like in and out. Like because the IV had been out, so that means no fluid. That means we don't know how long my body hadn't been receiving fluids throughout the night. I am like not well, like at all. My blood pressure dropped to like, I think at its peak was like 68 over 32, so pretty bad. It dropped or 33. That was my lowest, and it was like bad. Thankfully, I mean, I'm sitting there and like no one could get an IV in me. I have really bad veins, like they're really small, I think is what they said, and just hard to find. I'm literally sitting there either with my eyes closed because I'm like gone, or like I'm staring at the wall with my mouth dropped and there's just tears streaming down my face with no emotion. It was probably freaky. Like I probably looked possessed, and they're just sitting there, and I'm not making any facial expression. I had 5 people around me sticking me with needles over and over and over again until someone got a vein. Finally, they call an IV team. They stick the vein, they get it in, they start hand pumping me with syringes of fluid. 40 boluses of fluid was put in my body. I start to like, okay, they put me on pressors and antibiotics, and my body starts to come back to life. I didn't sleep. Like, I slept a little that night, but it was like naps. Like, I just wasn't, because at that point now I'm getting my blood pressure taken every 5 minutes. I'm getting like, there was just a lot going on. And it was also just very stressful, because genuinely, like when I tell you like that 2 o'clock little experience was terrifying, like I was not conscious enough to speak or like express what I was thinking or feeling, but I was conscious enough to know what was happening, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not okay. Like I knew it was terrifying. So anyways, they put me on pressors and antibiotics, IV antibiotics. They had me on oral before. I'm gonna fast forward. I was in the ICU for 3 days, constantly low blood, or after the pressors, it went back up, but still blood pressure's low. But like, it's like my normal, which is like 90 over 60, which is low, but that's normal for me. And that's with pressors. And then sometimes it would go up a little bit more, but like that was probably the average. They told me to leave the ICU. I had to have a 65 map. If you know what that means, you know what that means. I don't know. I'm not going to explain it, but that was not like an achievable goal for me, so they lowered it to 60. I ended up leaving the ICU a few days later. I had an ultrasound that showed no abscess under my pressure sore, so they were like debating on surgery. I had an MRI that didn't show much. However, they could look at the wound and they were like, it needs to be debrided. Like, there is not healthy tissue in here, whatever. In that time period, we found out the culture of my bladder came back, and I had 100,000 units of E. coli. And so that was causing urosepsis. So that was the first factor. Then they went into surgery a few days later, and in surgery, something that did not show up on the MRI is an orange size abscess under my skin. Don't know how it got walled off, and that's why, again, it was the same thing that happened with my staph infection that caused my paralysis. It walled itself off, so it wasn't detectable to a white blood cell count. It walled itself off, and they found bacteria. They found 3 different types of bacteria. 1, staph, 2, E. coli, and 3, strep, all in my wound. And they removed the abscess from, the wound. Now, we're going to fast forward. I ended up leaving, and during that surgery, they put in a wound vac. If you're familiar, this is my wound vac. I'm going to show you guys. This is my handy dandy friend. It is a tube. I have basically a sponge that goes from the wound that they packed. They sponged it over, and then I have a tube coming out of my hip right now. This thing is my best friend, but my worst enemy right now. But if I didn't have it, I would not be well. And, okay, graphic, I'm, warning you if you get, queasy, but I'm going to show you the wound vac. Here's my wound vac. I just got it changed yesterday, so this is probably, the most empty it'll be. Basically, it takes it suctions out the wound, and blood and, other stuff gets crystallized into, a powder form of, whatever comes out of that. And it goes into the machine, and it just, yeah. So I will have this for a month, and then I'm going to go back, and I'm going to get the wound closed, and then I should be good. But, yeah, that kind of, sums it up. It was a crazy experience, and it's just crazy how, I've never experienced, I've been paralyzed for 5 years, and I haven't really experienced the fullness of a pressure sore. Now I know. So a big point of this video is, if you're paralyzed, pressure sores are no joke. I've heard this so many times. I've heard horror stories like this, or bad stories like this. That's okay. I'm good. I have a lot of feeling in my butt. I move a lot. Still happened to me. So just be careful. Make sure you're checking your skin. If you see something, get it taken care of it till it is healed. Not till it's healing, till it is healed. Yeah, there's so much more detail I give you about, being in the hospital. It was wild. But I met, again, nurses are amazing. Children's Healthcare Atlanta is an amazing hospital. Such a God thing that we ended up there, because I don't know how things would have turned out if I didn't go there and stayed at that hospital, or if I didn't have my parents at the tournament, or if I was in Anderson. I'm very, very lucky that everything worked out the way it did. And I have a great amount of gratitude for the fact that I got to leave the night before Thanksgiving and see my family, and just, it was amazing. That was a horrific and terrifying experience. I'm going to be so for real. But I do have a large amount of gratitude, the same feeling I left leaving the hospital when I lived there for, getting paralyzed and my spinal cord injury. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, there's my scary story time. Be safe out there. I don't know what to say, but I love you all. Yeah, be careful. This is just a scary reality of paralysis that you just kind of have to look out for. The 2 biggest things that, you need to look out for paraplegics, UTIs, and pressure sores, and I had a double whammy, sepsis in both. So, yeah. And they were like, no wonder you were so sick when it all came back, all the tests and cultures and whatnot. I was like, yeah. But I'm very thankful to be healthy. Now my regimen is a crap ton of antibiotics. I have my wound vac, some pain medication for the wound, and I have a home health nurse who comes to see me 3 times a week to change out my wound vac and clean it. Not a fun experience, but you know what? You gotta do what you gotta do. Things could be worse, and I'm grateful to be here. So, yeah. All right. I love you all. I'm sorry this video was so long. I wanted to give you the full detailed story. But yeah, I love you all. I hope you have an amazing day, night, whenever you're watching this. Bye, guys.